Hello, welcome to an e-demo on the network configuration of an Illustra Flex camera. First thing we're going to do here is just open up a web browser, and I'm going to navigate to the IP address of my Illustra Flex, and then I'm going to log in as an admin user. Okay, so once I've logged in, I'm going to select Network Settings from the menu on the left hand side. And you'll see there are a number of submenus underneath there. So let's take a look at the first one, which is called Network. If we move over to the right hand side, we will see all of the settings which are in that submenu, and the first one is the camera name. So what I can do is just select that field and change the camera name, and that is the camera's name on the network. Next, I have the IP address settings. So you can see at the moment I have those manually configured. So I've got my IP address, my subnet mask, and if I needed any gateways or DNS settings there, I would enter those there too. If I have a DHCP server on my network and I want to use it to assign an IP address to my Illustra Flex camera, I can just check the DHCP checkbox there, and that will then take the address from the DHCP server. Okay, so moving down to the port settings, we can choose the protocol for communication, so that's going to be HTTP or HTTPS, and we also have the two port settings there, so we can change those as we need to. Next we have the IPv6 settings, so we can use IPv6 if we want to. We can enable that, and if we choose that information button, that's going to show us all of the IPv6 information for this camera. Next we have UPnP. If I want to turn that off, I can choose the off button there. And then finally we have the OSD settings, and that means on screen display. There's two things we can toggle on and off here. We have the camera name and we have the date and time. Whenever we're happy with those settings, we can choose save and they will be updated. Okay, so the next submenu then underneath network settings is called RTSP. In here we can set our RTSP stream settings. First of all, we can set a username and password for accessing those RTSP streams, and then we can set whether or not the authentication is required to access the streams. Moving on then, we have the three streams. So for each of them, we can set whether they're unicast or multicast. We can set their URL, and we can also set their multicast address. Last thing we can do for each of the streams is we can choose whether metadata is enabled on the stream. Next, we have SNMP, and if you want to use SNMP to manage your network, you can choose to enable it on the camera here, and this camera supports versions 1 through 3. Version 3 also has username and password. We also have the read and write strings. We have enabling and disabling a trap. If you want to use the trap, you can set where the host for that trap is there as well. And then you can set whether or not to use a heartbeat, again where the host is and what the interval of that heartbeat should be. And then at the bottom here we have the option to download the management information base, and we can do that just by selecting that download button there. When we're happy, we can choose save, or we can reset back to factory settings by choosing reset to default. Okay, so the next menu then is called 8021X, and 8021X allows us to assign the extensible authentication protocol. We can do that using these settings here, so we can turn it on and off, set the protocol, username, passwords, and then we can also upload certificates there as well. Next we have firewall, and this allows us to set up either allow or deny for various IP or MAC addresses. You can see, first of all, I'm going to choose the mode, so do I want to allow only the addresses I'm going to add and no other addresses will be allowed access, or do I want to deny the addresses I'm going to add and all other addresses will be allowed access. So I can choose one of those, enter the IP or MAC address in the box there, and then choose the protocol which I am using. So that's going to be TCP, UDP, or both. Next we have OnViv, so I can turn on or off various OnViv components for this camera, so that can be discovery, commands, and authentication. And then finally we have dynamic DNS, so we can enable dynamic DNS, set the provider, and then enter all of the relevant information there.